Welcome everybody to the February 4th Learning Labs. The first presenter for today is going to be our Chief District Judge, Dr. Michael Alexander. He is going to be giving us a session on how to be a judge for the upcoming contest season. Remember, submit your contestant intent by February 15th, your contestant names by February 22nd. Area contest is March 9th. Division contest is March 23rd, and district contest is April 20th. We need functionaries, we need judges, we need all of these things. So definitely reach out to your clubs. But right now we're going to talk about the most important bit, because it's always a challenge to get these folks ready to go, and you hopefully are going to be some of them. So presenting Dr. Michael Alexander with Chief Judge Training. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather, and everybody here. Is there anybody here who has not been to a contest or two in their day? Raven, very good. So you can, oh, Steve, I just saw you raise your hand. You've never been to a contest? Your credibility is low.
Well, it depends on how memorable that they were, but I digress.
Well, actually, that's something which I've been talking with Heather and the others about, and we're going to want to go back to making them more memorable and more of an exciting thing to do. Now, some of that is not the judge's responsibility, but yeah, let's go ahead and make sure the contests work out well. And I'll let all the area directors and division directors and program quality directors deal with some of that. But I want to talk about the actual judging of the contest. Now, Raven, you've never been to a contest before?
No, I'm pretty new.
Okay, that's fine. How new are you?
I haven't given my icebreaker speech yet.
Okay. So while this will be interesting for you, I hope, you will not be able to qualify as a judge. There are other functionary roles which are wonderful and important, and I'm delighted that you are interested in learning more about this. I think we all should be. But in order to qualify as a judge, you must have completed, well, let me back up and then I'll get you that. You must have completed more projects than not your icebreaker yet. This season, we're going to have two contests. Now, the basic concepts are ones you're all familiar with. We're going to have a table topics contest in which, a little different from your club thing, everybody in the contest will compete asking or answering the same question. They'll be escorted out of the room so that they do not hear the question and brought in one at a time so that they can all answer the same fundamental question. But other than that, it's like table topics. They won't know the question in advance, and they'll come up with brilliant answers, we hope. The second contest is the so-called international contest. That can be any speech on any topic in any style. And that will happen second for the most part, and everybody will get up and be able to hear each other. Now, unlike the standard contest or standard meeting in which your speech is evaluated, that is, you are given hints and suggestions on how to do better next time. The judges, Johnny's already bending over. She's either tired or I've upset her. Okay, good. The judge's responsibility is to determine, to vote on who did the best job with this speech. So it's a different role than we're used to in the club level, but it's still a very important one. Now, if you guys have done this before, I can go as a brief review rather than in too much detail, and that's where I'm going to go ahead and go. First of all, in order to qualify, and this is why you don't, Raven, you must be a member in good standing of a club in good standing. And that's easy. You have to have pay your dues. and make sure your club has enough people who've paid their dues. The turnover point is April for dues, so you could have a problem if your club is behind for the district level, although the division and area will be fine. Raven, again, for your benefit, I think the others know, at first, the club will select their contestant for these, and each club will be allowed to send one contestant for the international and one for the table topics. They can choose that person any way they want to. They can do a contest, or they can just vote or dragoon someone. But once it gets to the area level, it's the winner of that contest goes on to the next one, and the contests are at all the areas will compete, will send their clubs, and then the winner of the areas will go to the division, the winners of the division go to the district. Pretty straightforward. The winners of the district for the international go all the way up to the very top, or at least till they drop out, but the table topics stops at the district level. Now, as judges, you need to have completed level 1 and level 2 in a path. That's a little bit easier than it is on contestants for the international contest, but that's not a problem you have to worry about. But if someone asks, no, you do not have to. I'm sorry, for judges, level 1 or level 2, or 6 projects in the old competent communicator manual. That's where the difference is. But the contest goes pretty much as you would expect. You have a contest Toastmaster, you have the contestants, and then the judging. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you the judge's ballot sheet. I'm going to start off with the table topic sheet. Oops, that isn't the way to do that. I apologize. What I want to do is share that. International speech contest. There we go. Okay, and hopefully everybody can see that. This is the basic judging sheet. I want to emphasize it is the same for everybody in every Toastmasters contest all around the world. And I think it's even written in English all around the world, just to make life even more universal. And what you have is a series of categories. Now, this is a spreadsheet version of it, which I'm using for a particular reason. Your series of categories. How is the speech developed? The structure, organization, etc. Its effectiveness. Its value. Does it have good ideas, etc.? These are all content-related issues. So there's a point value, 50 points total, suggesting that it's excellent. You might want to give it a 20 for speech development, or a 15 or a 15, but also what would be good, very good, and fair. And again, the total of these are content 50. There's also for physical, the delivery, your physical appearance, the voice, flexibility, etc., the assurance, manner, and enthusiasm. And then there's the appropriateness of the speech to the audience and purpose. And you'll notice that this is tied together under language. And there's the correctness of the grammar, etc. Again, this one is a table topics judge. So what you're going to do is you're going to get from the contest master, who should announce the names of all of the contestants, and you will write in this, the name of the contestant. I'm going to have contestants 1, 2, and 3. and 3 here. And then when the first contestant has finished, there will be a minute of silence during which you will evaluate the various parts of their speech. This table topics had great speech development organization, but was it effective? No, it was kind of boring, actually, so I'm going to give it a 6. And so on. When you finish doing all of these, you'll have a minute just to put those down. And during that minute, everybody should be silent in the room. So there's no distractions for you. You can just think about this. Then the second person will speak. The second person may do better or worse, better in some parts, worse in others. You want to put their evaluations down, realizing that if they've done worse, you give them a lower score. If they've done better, there are people who say, do not consider the other person's scores. I consider that wrong, because if person two's speech was less effective or more effective than person one's, I want to make sure that his score reflects that. Otherwise, because it's subjective, you might give them a lower score, give them the wrong balancing score. In this case, it was better. And then, again, when you're finished with that one, or when they're finished, you'll have the minute to do that. And then you'll go to speaker number 3, who I'm just going to give them a score. Well, I'm going to give them, for reasons I'll talk about later, the same score as I gave 2. Now, this is going to create a problem, which we'll get to. So that's the basic start. When all of the people have spoken, in this case, there are 3 of them, you will have as much time as you need. The chief judge will stop them if they say you have 5 minutes or you have 2 minutes, or you'll have as much time as you need to do the math. Now, if you happen to use the spreadsheets which I've created, which Heather will make available at the appropriate point on you will see that this is the total score. You just sum up the ones above. Now, there should be scores in all of these things here, but I figure you people can put in numbers here. Now, you see a problem with this? Simple problem is that we have 2 people who have the same score. Your job as a judge is to make sure we pick a winner. So we can't handle a tie. So you're going to have to break that tie any way you feel is appropriate. Now, my spreadsheet actually warns you right here. There's a tie between these 2 people. Just to make life easier, I'm going to give extra points to him and break the tie. Now, you can break the tie fully subjectively. And although they tell you that the total points possible is 100 points, all that really matters is what's relative. Because nobody's going to see any of this except for the ballot counters. And the ballot counters are just going to see the sheet here that says first, second, third. Now, on the formal sheet, if you're using the traditional sheet, which you might be if you're judging in person or whatever, there is a section to be torn off. And that, let me see if I have that. Okay, give me a second here. Okay. For this, it looks a little different. And give me a second. I'm going to have to stop sharing for a second. Go back here. Okay. And now I can go back to share this one. You know, you always think you've got it all set up, and it's never quite the way you thought it was. Here we go. For these, you will see there is at the bottom, this is for those who are doing in paper. There's a ballot which says, again, first place, second, and third place for the contest. You must sign your name on this because you're going to turn it in physically. And you must type your name as well. If you don't do that, it doesn't count. But again, the rule is the same. Put the names across the top, the score is down there, and make sure you break a tie. Relatively straightforward. Anyone have any questions so far? Okay, good. Yes, Kim, you have a question. Kim, did you have a question? Or did I just did make it disappear and therefore you can't tell you have a question? Okay.
Looks like her internet.
Your mean, yeah, hello?
Kim, your
Raising-
internet is.
Type,
She's having problems with her.
what? Oh, my internet is,
You're coming in all
You want-
choppy. You might want to type your question into chat.
I'm being,
Got the tension with a knife. But this is good practice. Oh,
you
You know-
said,
Go
you
ahead.
said to type your name, but can you print your name?
okay. To be clear, you're talking about for the paper ballot?
Yes,
For the paper ballot, just said type because that's what I'm used to saying, muscle memory. No, you can print, you can put it in any way you want to. I just simply, or whoever your chief judge is, needs to be able to clearly read your name as well as the signature to validate it. Any way that is clearly legible is fine. And
okay,
yes,
because
go ahead.
because you can't really type your name in there because we don't use old-fashioned typewriters anymore.
Well, I do the impossible, which is I actually type it, taking advantage of loopholes in PDF, in PDF control. And then I print it out in advance. But no, just write it by hand. Just write it. Let's not overcomplicate this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? That's fundamentally the basics of all this. I don't want to drag this out, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about how you serve as a good judge. First of all, before you start, you're going to have to fill out a certificate of eligibility and swear on your firstborn child to be generally well behaved. I used to use that on dates, but what if I get pregnant? Don't worry about it. I've already taken care of our firstborn child. But you fill out a basic eligibility form, get it either electronically or physically to the chief judge, and then you take your ballot, either electronically or the paper version, depending upon which you prefer. And when you judge, you want to, number one, listen fully and without bias, including there's a natural tendency to bias yourself in favor of the first person you've heard just kind of sticks in your mind hard, or the last person does. That's one of the reasons why you're taking the minute of silence between each of the contestants. You also do not want to be biased in favor of people who have more experience. You're judging them on this speech at this time. If you've heard it better in the past, don't mark them down for it. If you've heard it worse in the past and they say, hey, you've improved, doesn't matter. How well did they do this time? You also have to remember, by the way, with respect to the international contest, that whatever the subject matter is, it's okay. Do not bias it in favor of the fact that they said something you really like or something you really don't. Now, some of you people here have no morals or convictions, and that won't bother you in the least. Some of you are going to say, I simply cannot permit a person who said white should be worn after Labor Day to win the contest no matter how well they did. You're not allowed to get away with that. So if they have experience or a good coach, it doesn't matter. Just listen to the speech and how they gave it. If they have an unfortunate handicap, or if they're particularly beautiful, it doesn't matter. You're evaluating their delivery of the speech. Now, be aware of the fact that there may have problems that they have to work around. And if they work around the problems, it's still the speech. But don't say they had no hand gestures if they have no hands. Just evaluate the speech. When you get to the district level, where the speeches will be offered in hybrid format, some will be speaking physically there at whatever the venue is. Do we know what the venue is yet, Heather?
It's at Caltech.
Caltech.
Mhm.
Okay. Some people will be showing up at Caltech. Some of us didn't have the grades to make it to Caltech. So we'll be appearing virtually. You must do everything you can to avoid being biased in favor of the people who appear physically or in favor of the people who appear virtually. That doesn't matter. And then we may very well have people who are calling in from Kuala Lumpur who really can't make it there physically anyway. And I've talked to, so basically, when that's the sort of thing we are looking at to work things through. And when you are done, when you've had a chance to do the scoring, either, as I say, either electronically, which will be fast, or I will get to you, Jeff, I do see your hand. Either electronically or physically, you will turn your ballots in in a virtual world or in the virtual method, via text to the ballot counters. You will know who they are in advance. Again, if it's a paper ballot, make sure you signed it. If you're sending it in via text message, they'll know who you are, and your phone number will identify it for any questions in the future. So that will be fine. If you are the tiebreaker judge, which is slightly different from the regular voting judge, then you will give your ballot only to the chief judge, who will use it to break a tie, which is, you don't get counted as often as the others, but when you're counted, boy, you're important. Personally, I always give my tiebreaker judging position to the guy I most trust, because if something goes wrong with theirs, it's a problem. And I'll stop now. Jeff, go ahead, ask your question.
I was just asking, or maybe making a comment, because we're doing most of our the first two contests on Zoom, and the third one will be hybrid. But for those of us who will be doing their contests in Zoom, if they're like what we are right now, most of us are like a talking head. they're probably not going to be using hand gestures very well. So, wouldn't they be, when we downgrade them because of that?
Thank you, Johnny. And I want to say, because that's exactly what I wanted to demonstrate. The answer is that while we are not allowed to bias our votes in favor of those with better equipment, or to make compensation points for those who have bad equipment, it is certainly possible, as Johnny just demonstrated, for you to set up your camera and back up so that you're more visible. We can be better seen. It's easier to move our hands. If you were at the Speakers Bureau last night, as several of you were, you saw people who actually set up their cameras across the room and they were standing. And is it possible, is it reasonable to bias things in favor of someone who does a better job of framing themselves? Absolutely. Framing yourself is a presentation skill. And okay. Now, is that a question, Deepak?
No, I was just trying to, comment on what you just said about yesterday's. When we started the networking just before the actual 6 o'clock time, I did ask, Judy and Michelle that, how do I, stand up, and how, are you able to see me and hear me properly? So they guided me to proper distance, and also they told me to lift up my laptop so that they can see me at an eye level. So that is something can be done before the meeting starts, and with the help of whoever is the in charge of on that day. And second thing, if I remember last couple of times when I was a judge for different contests, I did use the text. I had a number, for example, David's number, who was a chief judge, and I had sent him the text for the contest results, like 1, 2, 3, the names. And Michael wants also the form. We can just take a picture and also send it to the chief judge as well. So if you are a judge, and if you are a chief judge, and then it's a different thing that probably Dr. Michael will talk about. Thank you.
Yeah, historically, we've taken pictures of the bottom of the form, and I found it simply to be a lot of hassle to get a picture, and not necessary. And the chief judges should be aware of this right now and not be asking for that. And they should be using text messages because they're simple, clean, and fast. I've been in the past where people tried to send emails, and my email can be delayed up to 3 hours, which can be a real problem. They've also tried using various fancier apps and had all sorts of interesting problems. So that'll be simple and straightforward. Okay. Did anybody else have a question through this here? Okay. Then that really, the other thing which I want to make sure I tell you is, do not concern yourself with whether the contestant is overtime or undertime. That's not your concern as a judge. That is the job of the timer. If you concern yourself, you may very well be wrong. That said, I will tell you that if somebody seems to be going on forever, that should count against them, even if they only spent 4 minutes. And if it seems like they haven't finished their presentation, you can count that against them. Not because of the time problem, but because it wasn't a good speech if you weren't fascinated until the end. That basically is what you need to know to be a good judge. Work with your chief judge. Go ahead and gather together gather together before the contest starts so that the judge notes are there in the breakout room. Please turn off your cameras so that they do not know who you are. And I always enter under a pseudonym when I'm judging. First time I did this was International Women's Day, and so I entered with a photograph, not of me, but of Sandra Day O'Connor. And I identified myself simply as Judge 1. So it was easy to tell the judges were all there, but nobody said, oh, Michael must have voted against me. Everybody else would have loved me. So, so that makes it nice and anonymous, and just stay that way through the whole contest. Remember, you cannot judge, unless you get special permission, I'll just leave it there. You cannot judge a contestant who you are in a club with, whether or not they are competing for your club. I recently was not able to vote because even though the club that Richard Snyder and I are both in is in District 12, and he wasn't competing for District 12, we are in the same club. And I've had it against him ever since that last evaluation he gave of me. But he was protected. Yes, Jeff.
Can you do us a favor and go through the process on who can raise a protest and the process of that? It's kind of complicated, and it'd be nice to get that explained.
Good, because I wanted to point that out, Jeff. Thank you for moving us along there. There are basically two reasons to protest a speech that is given. Number one, the speaker is not eligible. And number two, the speech is not original. Now, the speaker is not eligible if they have not, well, for the table topics, they're eligible as long as they're a member in good standing. Of a club in good standing, because their club has to be at least 8 members too. But for the international, they must have completed level 1 and level 2 of a Pathways project, or be distinguished Toastmaster, who sort of gets grandfathered on that one. And the other thing, which is a disqualification for both table topics and the international, is originality. The speech must be substantially, that is defined as 75% of the content, original. Now, before anybody asks, yes, I have, as an experiment, given someone else's table topics response and nobody caught me. Didn't do it in contest. I did it in the club level. It's fully possible that if someone asked a question I just already knew someone else's answer to and said, I wonder if they know. But, so those are the two reasons for disqualification. With me so far, Jeff? All right. Now, the only people who can raise a protest are contest master, another contestant, and a voting judge. A tiebreaker judge cannot raise a objection, nor can the chief judge. And I will tell you that this happens very, very rare that it's a problem at all, but it did happen to me once. I was chief judge, and I was the only one who recognized that it was a plagiarized speech. So it went through. It didn't win anyway. Wasn't well done, but. However, if you hear a speech which you have heard before, or you see someone who you don't think is original, bring it to the chief judge, and the judges will meet together and talk about it. And the person who you have protested against will have a chance to come in and defend themselves. So you haven't thrown them out by protesting. Don't hesitate to do that if you have a question. It has happened once that someone was, a protest was raised for originality against a contestant. Everybody said, I've heard that speech before. I know, or I've read that speech somewhere. Person was brought in. He said he was prepared for it. He said, yes. You have heard that and read that speech before. You read it in Reader's Digest. Here is a copy of the Reader's Digest you read it in, and here is my byline. And I know that someday I'm going to hear somebody give the I Have a Dream speech that Martin Luther King made famous. And I'm going to check with them, and they're going to bring me in their resume that proves that they were, in fact, Martin Luther King's speechwriter. By the way, for those of you who wonder if I make stuff up, Martin Luther King ad-libbed that speech, believe it or not. But the point is valid. If that protest, those protests must be brought before the contest results are announced. Once they're announced, it's final. Okay. So that's that part of the process. Trust the chief judge if you have questions. If you, for some reason, lose connection with the contest, you're judging online, which obviously you will be except at the district level, where we're going to shoot for about half people in person and half people online. Although in order to make a profit on the contest, I know Heather wants more people there in person. But if you lose connection, the first thing to do is to curse at Johnny, who's probably your Zoom master. But if you lose connection yourself, then tell the chief judge and the ballot counters that you've lost connection and you cannot judge the contest, because unfortunately you cannot judge all of the contestants on the same basis. If I'm trying to guess what someone probably said in the 30 seconds it was down, that's very different from having heard it. If, however, the contestant drops off, then they're given about 30 seconds to reconnect, and they will be called upon to restart from exactly where they broke off. They don't get a second bite at the first part of their speech, which they would if they restarted. But do your best not to be biased by the fact that there was a discontinuity. It's tough. They have to reestablish, and reestablishing well is a good skill. I mean, don't hesitate to say they did a great job of picking up where they left off. I don't want to give them more points for it, but don't give them a benefit unless they impressed you with their skill at that. It's not a hardship advantage. Yes, Heather.
Yeah, we had that actually last year with Colin fell off. My question was, if you do have a judge that completely loses connection and you are now down a judge, how do you deal with that?
We just go on, and this is not the judge's problem, it's the problem for the international, problem for the chief judge and the ballot counters. You just simply go on with the judges that you have. And basically speaking, the rule is you have to have 5 judges at the area or 7 at the higher level. But that is what you have to start. If they drop out, you just work with however many you have left. If the one that you lose is your tiebreaker judge and you have to replace your tiebreaker judge, you simply say to someone, hey, you've just been promoted from voting judge to tiebreaker judge. And frankly, it's happened to me. It's happened in both directions. I fell off as a chief judge, and I've been able to fake it. But I've also had situations when we were first going online, and we were using GoToMeetings, which did not work at all, particularly not where I was at, because I was on a thinner section of the internet cable at the time. I was out in Fontana, and that was just way too far. I believe I'm the only person to be able to say honestly, I quit as chief judge in the middle of a contest. I assigned it to another chief judge trained, who was able to take over for me, and he had to give up his position as a voting judge. But you have to the honest answer to your question is, Heather, the chief judge's job includes figuring out how to compromise and wing it. And that means sometimes, I won't say breaking the rules, I will say extreme flexibility in bending the rules. Someone else would say breaking, but I can't say that because the district's program quality director is here, and she probably would slap my wrist. Please look over the ballots so as you feel you understand them. Heather will mount these someplace appropriate quickly, both the standard PDF versions and my Excel versions. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach me. I'll put my information in the chat here. Yeah, Johnny, your comment about telephone hotspots is a good suggestion too. But my contact information is 626-244-7817. But since I'm going to be out of town for the month of February, starting on the 7th, you'll probably find it better to reach me at urban@leprechaun.com. Yes, you can, in theory, phone me, and I will pick up if I'm awake. If I am located on a Wi-Fi network so that it doesn't cost me to pick up an international call, and frankly, if I'm not doing something more fun. I'm not going to Taiwan so that I can talk to you people. Steve, you're delightful to listen to, but frankly, I can hear you in California. I don't need to go to Taiwan and listen to you.
All right, fine, Mike. Have it your way.
Now, if you want to record yourself and send it to me later, that's groovy.
That's too much work, but thanks for the offer.
Okay. So if nobody has any questions, I don't want to drag this. Oh, God, it's taken longer than I should have anyway. I was going to say I don't want to drag this out, but I've gone on for a fair while.
What was the qualification for people? Obviously, we didn't have everyone in the district that attended here today. So what is, to remind me, the qualification that if someone is willing to step up as a judge, what is the minimum they had to complete project-wise or level-wise?
As a judge, you must either have completed 6 projects in the old CC manual.
Right.
I think there's some of us here who's that still qualifies for, or you must have completed a level 1 and a level 2 in a pathways path.
Same as international speech. Okay.
Which is, except the international speech. I'm sorry, as a judge, yeah. As a contestant, you must have completed level 1 or level 2.
Right.
As a judge, it's an option, but it's not a requirement. The 6 CC projects would also be acceptable.
Okay.
Of course, you must be a member in good standing of a club in good standing. And actually, for a judge, you should have been a member for at least 6 months besides. Because it's not just the speeches you've given, but the speeches you've heard in order to get a sense of comparison.
Plus being a DTM, right?
Well, we
DTM,
automatically qualify. Yeah.
DTMs are automatically qualified for everything. Despite the fact that we probably did all of our work so long ago that we're just coasting.
Thank you, Mike, and have a great
Oh.
trip.
The one other thing which I'm going to go ahead and say, because I don't know if it's going to ever qualify, if anybody qualifies for it, is the judge cannot be a candidate for
District office. Yeah,
district office.
right. Yeah.
And so,
Related question. Can they be a judge in a different district and be a candidate for district office?
my answer to that would be no. Now, I will double check that and let you know if that turns out I've been correct. If
'Cause
there's
I
anybody,
have multi-district folks, so.
oh, yes, well, I understand that very much. I'm pretty sure the answer is no. If I'm incorrect, I will send you word and we can disseminate it. But barring finding I'm wrong, as a witness, I used to say, I agree subject to check, which meant you have my testimony, but I reserve the right to change it if I find out I'm incorrect. But unless I say something, it stands.
In the Marine Corps, the correct answer was, ma'am, I don't know the answer to this question, but I will find out for you.
Do we have any more questions before I stop the recording for Michael? I saw Pauline come on camera.
Hey, hi everyone. Yeah.
There is, Heather will also put it up, an electronic, a video I recorded of this, handled differently because I couldn't get questions, which you're also free to look at and review.
Okay,
In
I'm gonna
fact-
stop recording.
Okay, very good.